Incredible. Even though I haven't played Final Fantasy VI, what is this feeling? Context, please. Triumphant General Celes's Trustmaster reward is a materia that boosts MP and Spirit by 40%, as well as granting a double killer against aquatic enemies. This is a pretty nice materia, not just for Celes, but for— oh shoot, what happened here? Her Super Trustmaster reward is a sword with a high amount of attack, magic, and spirit. Grants a 50% boost to limit burst damage, 30% boost to physical and magical evasion, and an additional flat 250 attack, magic, and spirit. This is an amazing sword, but these advantages are only available to units from Final Fantasy VI. Not that that makes it any less amazing, as there are certainly some incredible units from that game, like Biggs or Wedge, or Gao, or Magitech Terra. Onto her active abilities. Her attacks scale off her spirit stat, so keep that in mind. Invincible Swordplay changes Stardust Ray, and grants Celes a Provoke buff, a 75% general mitigation buff, and a 50% physical mitigation buff. Sealing Blade can nullify a magic spell. Cover, Magic 5, boosts your team stats by 230%, grants a 50% general and magical mitigation buff, and activates a magical cover. If we look at her white magic, we see Kuraga, Dispelga, Holy, and Blizzaga. Unfortunately, out of these four, only Blizzaga can be upgraded, so you won't be able to see Celes reach Aerith's Holy level. Passives. But for Trustmaster reward or Super Trustmaster reward equip, she gains Equipment Spirit if she's holding a single weapon, though she can hold a shield. She deals increased damage to aquatic and dragon enemies, aquatics more so than dragons, meets half the limit burst damage cap, and has a small boost to her limit burst gauge fill rate. If you upgrade her EX level to EX plus 2, she'll automatically fill her limit burst gauge when she enters the battle. She has an automatic passive magic cover that lasts for 5 turns, but you have to keep in mind that it's much more brittle compared to the one you get from her active ability. She has a 50% bonus to Vert's passive Provoke, and her normal attack spin changed to raise her spirit by 200%, and activates a weak magical cover. She also has a boost to the Chain Cap, though it's not yet complete. Let's look at her limit burst. It's a single strong spirit hit, grants your team a whopping 80% general and magical mitigation buff, and an additional 80% physical and magical mitigation buff against aquatic enemies. Unfortunately, for its high cost, the effects only last for 1 turn, but it would certainly be enough to survive a dangerous offensive. Time to change forms. Triumphant General Celes has a true Brave Shift, which has no limitations whatsoever. Onto her active abilities. If we look at her magic spells, we can see that she replaces Holy and Blizzaga for Shelga and Protectga, which can be upgraded further to raise their respective mitigation effects. Opera to Think of Her Lover is probably the most roundabout title I can think of. It boosts your team stats by 250%, fills their limit burst gauges by a decent amount, imbues ice onto them, and boosts their ice damage by 30%. Life devoted to Opera hurts Celes, but grants your team a powerful double dragon and bird killer, boosts their limit burst damage by 100%, and fills their limit burst gauges by a great amount. If you raise her EX level to EX plus 3, she gets access to Dragon Slayer, which grants your team a double 160% Dragon Killer buff. Passives. A lot of her passives have remained the same. She does have less spirit and HP boosters in this form, and loses things like her Chain Cap, but to compensate, she gets a 50% boost to most of her stats if she's holding an instrument. Her normal attack's been changed to Singing Beauty, which I think is kinda funny. It apparently hurts the enemy, but it does raise her team's stats, so it's not like it's completely hilarious. Let's look at her limit burst. It boosts her team's stats by 300%, imbues ice onto them, raises their ice damage by a whopping 45%, and buffs their limit burst damage by 250%. If we ever get an Ice Sephiroth, Celes would certainly be a premier supporter to consistently raise their damage. Alas, that's nowhere to be seen. Time to rank Brave abilities. I suggest prioritizing Magic Cover 5 to raise the sturdiness of her cover, Opera to Think of Her Lover to raise the ice damage buff, and leaving Invincible Swordplay as is, as that just raises its damage rather than the magnitude of her defensive effects. So, EX2? Raising Celes to EX plus 2 gives her access to an instant limit burst. I'd be concerned if you needed her base limit burst at the start of a fight, but her Brave Shift's limit burst can be critical in ending fights quickly with ice. While I would certainly see use in raising her speed, it's not too crucial in fights that could afford some levity. There are a number of ice support units anyways, though it's true that Celes' ice buffs completely outweigh theirs. Choosing to unlock EX plus 2 will depend on the battle at hand, and how much importance you, as a player, places on strength and speed. But of course, getting EX plus 2 also gets Celes a Super Trust Mugo, so there's definitely some room for rumination. While the sword itself would be a great boon to her and potentially others from Final Fantasy VI, that will vastly depend on the individual player. But what about EX plus 3? At that stage, you unlock Dragon Slayer, which grants a significant team-wide Dragon Killer buff. The effect itself, though powerful, is incredibly niche, but still just as important when applicable. But Celes does have a weaker Dragon Killer that you can settle for, and there are other alternatives, though admittedly slightly weaker or at a more demanding cost. Still, overall, it's not a very enticing reward when you look at the cost for EX plus 3. But why is this EX plus 3 less enticing than certain other units? You see, this scenario isn't like the EX plus 3s of previous premium Neo Vision units. The only other thing that unlocked was the respective vision cards. Every single unlockable ability was moved to EX plus 2. However, that doesn't seem to be the case of Celes. As a non-premium unit, you get her vision card at EX plus 1, and while you get a second copy at EX plus 3, I'm pretty sure the novelty will have worn off by that point. The vision card itself isn't exactly cream of the crop when it comes to stats, unless you're from Final Fantasy VI. And while the passives are nice and all, it's not mind-shattering enough to get an additional copy of it through EX plus 3. Overall, additional EX awakenings above EX plus 1 won't warrant immediate pursuit. Still, getting her to that level will certainly see a rise in your aptitude, when the effects become relevant, that is. So how good is Triumphant General Celes? In terms of sturdiness, she's one of the tankiest tanks to tank for your team, and carries a good bundle of mitigation effects to further raise their survivability. She even sees use outside of tanking, thanks to a series of additional effects. Spell nullification, ice support, niche killers, and a bit of healing lets Celes helps her team in many ways. Her support abilities may not meet the extent of the ever-expansive scope of Shoreline Fina and Daisy, but what she can do, combined with her innate perseverance, makes her one of the best tanks in the game. And when it comes to ice damage, an extra kick and niche killer effects can go a long way. You will have to keep elemental resistance in mind though, but it's not like you've never done that before anyways. Thanks for watching, and if you liked this video, leave a like and subscribe. Comment below if you summon for Triumphant General Celes. There aren't too many units that I plan to go heavy for in the future, so there's a part of me willing to spend some lapis. Of course, when it comes to her Brave Shift, I'll simply wait until her fragments become available in the VIP shop rather than immediately purchasing the bundle. I'm in no rush to get a strong magical tank, but there's something to be said about collecting units with pretty CG limit bursts.